With me now, everyone, presidential candidate, former Texas Governor Rick Perry. So wonderful to have you here. Welcome to the show, Governor Perry.
Honor to be with you. Thank you.
Let's start with the issue of border control, because you're from Texas. You've been governor there, a state that has had its challenges when it comes to border control. This is an issue that's been thrust right onto center stage right now for a variety of reasons. But first off, let me ask you about sanctuary cities, the death of Kate Steinle, an innocent young woman gunned down allegedly by a Mexican illegal immigrant. Why, in your view, do we have a problem with people that have been deported multiple times from this country and are still here committing illegal acts?
It goes to the heart of the challenge that we have in this country today, the lack of will in Washington, D.C. to do their constitutional duty to secure the border. If we had a Congress and an administration that were committed to securing the border, so many of these challenges that we have would start going away. You wouldn't have sanctuary cities. You wouldn't have these drug cartels and these transnational gangs that are penetrating through sexual slavery that we see in the state of Texas. I mean, there's just this host of issues from the economic side to the criminal side that are going to continue to really molest this country until we get the will in Washington, D.C. to secure the border.
So do you think that there is a direct link then between borders that are too loose and the crime that we're seeing in this country?
Absolutely. There is a clear, last year when the president came to Dallas, I met with him because I wanted him to come and see the border as we were having this massive people show up on our border, unaccompanied minors and other individuals, and I wanted the president to come see, because I felt really compelled that he needed to see what's happening on the Texas border. He refused me. I told him, I said, Mr. President, if you do not secure the border, Texas will. And that's what we did. I came back to Austin. I asked for volunteers. We deployed our National Guard, along with our Texas Ranger recon teams, our Parks and Wildlife wardens, our other law enforcement. And we had a 74% decrease in that region of the border where the bulk of these apprehensions were occurring. And that's what has to happen. We're seeing clearly county attorneys and sheriffs in New Hampshire came up to me in September last year after we put our troops and our law enforcement on the border, and they said, Governor, thank you for acting. Thank you for standing in the gap. Thank you for making a difference, because 1,500 miles away in New Hampshire, you have crime being committed against the citizens of this case in New Hampshire.
No, I know. I mean, they have an issue with it there, and people don't think of New Hampshire as having those kinds of issues, but it increasingly does. I know that as a former resident of the state myself. Let me ask you, when you were governor of Texas and you're out there doing your part to secure the border, did you get any threats yourself, or did your administration receive any threats from the likes of these drug cartels who, let's face it, are making money off of these porous borders, trafficking in drugs?
Yeah, I wouldn't have any idea whether we had any threats at all. We know that there's some real challenges, that there are really bad actors, and that Texas does its part. One thing about this state is it's not soft on crime, it's smart on crime. And this country needs to get smart on how to secure the border. We know how to do this. Reagan, it's about putting the personnel on the border, having the strategic fencing, and having the aviation assets looking down 24/7, flying from Tijuana to El Paso to Brownsville, looking down 24/7 with the right technology to be able to identify, analyze whether it's illegal activities or suspicious activity, and quick response teams that can go immediately to those places. At that particular point in time, that border can be secure. We can do this. We just don't have the will in Washington to accomplish it.
Governor Perry, what you're talking about, this link between crime and loose borders, is something that has gotten Donald Trump in a whole lot of trouble for, and you've got many members of the Republican Party now out criticizing him for his comments. Let me share with you what Governor Bush had to say.
We'll win if we offer something that gives people hopes their lives are going to get better. And Mr. Trump has every right to have every belief he has. He's going to run. That's fine. But I don't want to be associated with the kind of vitriol that he's spewing out these days.
Governor Perry, is it vitriol that he is spewing?
Well, I don't agree with Donald Trump's comments, but what Americans are looking for is not rhetoric. They're looking for a record, and they're looking for solutions. And that's the reason I'm the only person that's going to be able to stand up on that stage and talk about actually impacting the border of this country. We have put processes into place. We have put personnel on the border, the strategic fencing, and as I shared with you, the one thing that's really missing, these aviation assets that can look down 24/7, all kinds of weather, and tell us what's going on that border, and then we have quick response teams that can go there to shut down those activities. If we'll do that, the American people can go to sleep at night knowing that their southern border is secure. And it's not going to happen, though, until someone is in the White House that has the will to get it done. And I will tell you one thing. When I'm elected President of the United States, the will to secure the border will reside in Washington, D.C.
You say when you're elected President of the United States, the polling numbers, they're challenging, they're tough. How do you make an impact when you have frontrunners like Trump and Bush out there gaining so much momentum and attention?
Well, I'm not sure anybody's got a lot of momentum. When you look at 12 or 13% in the polls, I don't consider that to be an overwhelming lead. Americans want to look at a record. They're really tired of rhetoric. After will be 8 years of a young, inexperienced United States Senator, Americans are going to look for somebody that's got a substantial amount of executive leadership. Not anybody on that stage is going to have the world life experiences, whether it's growing up on a dryland cotton farm, whether it's wearing the uniform of the country, whether it's being the chief executive of the 12th largest economy in the world for the last 14 years and having a very successful run at that. 1.5 million jobs we created in Texas from the end of 07 through 2014, while the rest of the country lost 400,000 jobs. Americans are begging for a leader to give them an optimistic view about the future of this country, and I'm telling you, I'm so excited about the opportunity that we have in this country. Our best days are in front of us. We're just a few good decisions and a leadership change at the top of the best days America's ever had.
I know you have a great record in terms of job growth in Texas. One of the frustrations with this economy is we have just seen such anemic growth despite everything that Janet Yellen and the Fed has tried over and over again with various rounds of quantitative easing, effectively money printing, and this 0% interest rate policy for 6 years, Governor. What is it that this economy needs outside of what Janet Yellen has tried?
Well, it's not the manipulation of the Federal Reserve that we need. What we need is the manipulation of the taxes and the regulations that's strangling Americans' opportunity to go risk their capital and have a chance to have a return on investment. An American, well, I might even add a North American energy policy that drives down the cost of electricity. You couple that with a corporate tax policy that lowers corporate tax rate. It does two things. Number one, it will raise mid-level wages, and it'll also give an incentive to bring manufacturing back on shore in this country. That is a solution to this country's job woes and to our economic woes.
You got me, Governor. I don't know why we have the highest tax rate in the world for our corporations.
It's crazy.
It incentivizes these companies to start operations overseas. But before I let you go, I do want to ask you about your response and reaction to this deal with Iran. We heard from the president today. He's trying to sell it as making this country safer. Listen to this.
With this deal, we have the possibility of peacefully resolving a major threat to regional and international security. Without a deal, we risk even more war in the Middle East, and other countries in the region would feel compelled to pursue their own nuclear programs, threatening a nuclear arms race in the most volatile region in the world.
You really think it's going to make us safer?
I think for the first time in almost 50 years, the United States has changed its position on non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. I mean, this is basically sending the message to Iran that we're going to give them international recognition that they can, in fact, have a nuclear weapon in the future. And I think that is so counter to what America's has always been about. It is sending a negative message to our allies. My bet is if you went and asked the Saudis, you went and asked the Jordanians, the Turks, the Egyptians, and in particular the Israelis, they're all going to say this is a bad deal for the region, it's a bad deal for Europe, and I will suggest to you it's a bad deal for America. Well, the president is naive in his thinking that the Iranians are going to live up to this.
Well, we did hear from Netanyahu, for example, and he certainly thinks it's a bad deal. One more question for you, Governor. Hundreds of protesters that were out taking to the streets outside hedge fund investor Dan Loeb's house in the Hamptons recently, and they were basically upset because Dan Loeb has been given lots of money to fund school choice. But yet, Governor, you look at the state of our public schools in America, and it's clear we're not competing. We're not able to compete. Our kids are losing out. Do we need some kind of new system and overhaul for education?
Well, there's a model to help improve public education, and it's in the 12th largest economy in the world, and that's the state of Texas. From 2003, we were 27th in the nation in high school graduation rates. We put incentive pay. Matter of fact, we had the largest incentive pay program for teachers. We had a testing program that went in and started looking at kids early on and identifying where they were having challenges. We had a huge expansion of charter schools. I'll suggest to you that public school vouchers would be another one of those great additions to that type of a formalization.
You're going to get a lot of resistance from some teachers unions.
Well, but second highest graduation rates in America are where we are in Texas now. And you either have to say, I'm for the unions or I'm for the kids. In the state of Texas, we said we're for the kids.
I like that. Governor Perry, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That was terrific. Thank you very much.
You're awesome.
All right.
Look forward to seeing you. Come to Austin one of these days. There too.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah. So.